This keeps residents active. Golden Pond, state-of-the-art senior housing and healthcare services.
You're watching HCAM TV, and for more Hopkinton, visit HCAM Ed.
Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Thank you. Well, the first meeting of the Zonal Advisory Committee, Zach, for 2022. Happy New Year to everyone. Let's start with that. John, am I supposed to start by reading the remote meeting script?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Is Curtis not coming today?
Oh, that's a great question.
I mean, you can start because it's 7 o'clock and you're the vice chair, so you can definitely start.
Okay.
I didn't know if he was not coming at all.
I wasn't certain, but he also said he was still hurting from his post-surgery recuperation. So yeah, let me start. Thank you. As a preliminary matter, this is Sundar Sivaraman, zoning committee. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and hear me. Members,
Sundar, we're having some audio problems.
Please respond in the affirmative. Shoot. Can you not hear me at all?
We can hear you, but it's getting garbled a little
okay.
bit. Can hear you fine now. It's when you actually go to talk.
Really? I mean, Samak, can you survive, or I can connect by phone?
Why don't we keep going like this, and then if it happens again, then you can connect by phone.
Okay, got it. I will do that. Okay. John Coutinho. Ted Barker-Hook.
Ted Barker-Hook is here.
Elise Barrett-Mihalowski. Ron Foisey.
Elise is here.
Thank you. Ron Foisey.
Ron Foisey is present.
Madhu Chandrasekhar.
Hi, I'm here too.
Thank you. Mary Larson-Marlowe. Rachel Rawson.
Present.
Thank you. And Sundar Sivaraman is a present. Did I miss anyone? I didn't.
Sundar, you're having a little audio problems now, but if I can guess what you were saying. Did I miss anybody? You did. You missed our two new alternates, Nisha and James.
Nisha.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Nisha. And James.
Present.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Gelsich.
John Gelsich, present.
Sorry,
Sundar,
I'm really sorry. Yeah, yes, I can.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sundar again. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I really apologize for the connectivity issues from earlier. I think we had done with the attendance. I apologize. Good evening. This open meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely via the recently signed Act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1st of 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of the Governor's March 12th, 2020 executive order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The new law has two major parts. First, the new law allows public bodies to continue providing sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Am I audible now through my phone?
Yes.
Okay. Accessible to the public, adequate alternative means, which may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. Second, the new law authorizes all members of a public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirements that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remain suspended. For this meeting, the Zoning Advisory Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the ZAC agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. General meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each item on the agenda. If members wish to engage in dialogue, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Thank you. That was quite the ordeal. I really apologize, everyone, for having to endure that. The agenda today consists of 3 items. Overview of the planning board process for annual town meeting, conversions of single family into multi-unit housing, sections 210, 125, which is conversions of residential property as potential for creating more affordable housing options, and then a review and approval of the minutes of November 22nd, 2021. With that, moving over to the first item, let me pull up. John, can you help me here as to, I think we had proposed certain items for the ATM, right?
Yes. So we have 5 articles. All of them were reviewed by Zach and then sent to the planning board. So do you want to go through them again?
At the very least, I think we want the Zach to know what those 5 were. I know Mary hasn't joined, has she?
She has not.
Okay. We did speak about, why don't we at least start with what those 5 are? And I don't think we were planning on having a detailed discussion here, but at the very least, I think I was hoping that if Mary had joined, we actually could go through what the planning board process was for that. And maybe between you and me, if we could help guide that process
Sure.
or the dialogue.
Sure. So let me pull up the articles. So the articles included the dimensional table with references, plural uses is a housekeeping article. So that one, for those of you who don't remember, was just changing all of the uses that were plural back to singular because there was an inconsistency in the use listings. Housekeeping article for gender neutral references. So that's changing all chairman to chair and other instances. 1 principal use per lot. So this one was changed from when Zach saw it. When Zach saw it and voted it, it was 1 principal use per lot, just in general. And we've changed it now to be 1 principal use per lot, focusing solely on single family homes, because internal discussions after Zach moved it forward to planning board was that there are certain areas in town that have multiple principal uses that we want to encourage, specifically storefronts and businesses. So having a catch-all 1 principal use per lot only could create some issues. So we want to look into that a little bit further. But one thing, the thing that started that whole discussion was only allowing 1 single family house per lot. So that's kind of what we whittled it down to. And it also included the definition for principal use to be added. And then the final one is the parking reduction and then consistency issues in parking spaces versus space.
Yeah, board members, any questions on this? I know we've had conversations and discussions about many of these items. We've had robust discussions on the parking space as well as the single-use clause change. So, John, I'm going to be honest. I don't know what we meant by planning board process. I know was between Mary and myself was the plan to go in front of planning board and do a presentation of this, or can you help?
Sure. So I think what Mary was just going to do is kind of, this is what I assumed at least, was just give an overview to Zach members. We have some new Zach members who probably have not been a part of this process in the past. But there's a certain procedure that we have to follow at the planning board, and just to describe what that is and how we get to town meeting between now and then. So what the planning board just did at their most recent meeting on January 3rd was they voted to add these articles to the warrant. So now that these articles have been placed on the warrant, they're essentially placeholders. The planning board now has, between now and the town meeting date, the chance to hold hearings on these articles. And so that would invite public comment. And that's what is scheduled for January 31st, the next planning board meeting. So what they'll do is they'll open up the hearing, accept any public input, have discussion among board members. And the goal at that point is to potentially alter the language, but it can't be altered so that it changes the intent of the article. It can really only be like minor, non-substantial changes. So they could either vote to do that. They can vote to remove the article from the warrant if they no longer want to have it on the warrant. But the real ultimate goal is to vote for a recommendation on how town meeting should vote on that article. Generally, all of these would be supported by the planning board unless, there's some controversy. These I don't believe would be controversial, but you never know. So that's really the ultimate goal of the planning board hearing process, is to solicit a recommendation from the planning board, which they can then read off at town meeting. And they have until town meeting date to do that. The hearings are opened on January 31st, but they can go on up until May if they need to.
Got it. Thank you, John. And when is the annual town meeting coming up?
I want to say May 2nd, sometime in May. Let me look. I'll look at the calendar.
Sure.
right, so it doesn't look like they put it on the calendar yet. Oh, yeah, they did. Yep, May 2nd, 10 to 4 is when the annual town meeting is. So that's a Monday.
Got it. Oh, it's a Monday. Okay.
It is a Monday. So town meeting is usually, or I think it was usually held on a Monday, starting on a Monday. And then they changed it last year because we had to have it outside.
Okay. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, cold. It was a cold day. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on the process from members? For the new members, for the benefit of the new members, Mary Larson Marlowe is the designated member from this committee to the planning board, and I'm also a member of the planning board. So, of course, we are missing Mary in this meeting, so just want to clarify that part. But if there are questions, specifically, I think James and Nisha, this process could be new for you. So if you have any questions. So I apologize, Nisha. I don't think we've had an opportunity to introduce you or James in this forum. So unless that has happened, I don't recall. Is this Nisha and James's first? Yes, I thought so. So I'm sorry, incredibly rude of me not to have started with that. Would you mind introducing yourself? And I'm sure you've gone through these process of swearing in and all. So welcome to this forum. And yeah, please, if you have anything to say in terms of what you're hoping in this, it's a great body to be part of. It's got great members, and so welcome, Nisha. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So this is my first meeting. We moved to Hopkinton a year ago, almost a year and a half ago, and I'm basically working in pharmaceutical industry. My entire background is in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, but I do have interests in serving the town. So I'm now I moved from Nashville. So for some reason, I really didn't feel that connected when I was in Nashville. And as soon as we moved to Hopkinton, I really felt that we belong here. So I just wanted to get more involved into the community and just try to help out where I can. So I approached and I was asked if I could join the committee. And usually I do volunteer a lot on social activities. So I think that's where my interest generally is, just to help out, and I thought this is a great way to do it, so I've joined.
Thank you so much. It's a great plan.
Thanks. And I look forward to working with you and learning and also contributing more, hopefully, as soon as I have a good hang of things.
Thank you. James, is this your first meeting as well?
No, I think it's maybe my third, but it's been stretched over about 6 weeks, so it's hard to remember.
Okay. If there are no other questions about the articles that we are proposing be added to the annual town meeting warrant, we can move on to the next topic. Let me pause. Are there any other questions before we move on to the next topic? I will take that as a no. The next topic is something that, again, near and dear to Mary and myself. So related to creating more affordable housing options in the town. So I think we wanted to look into 210-125, which is, if you have the town bylaws in front of you, the conversion of residential property as a potential opportunity to look at the language and see how we can essentially amend the language to promote more affordable housing. So how to convert single family units into multifamily homes. And again, this was supposed to be looking at the bylaw and looking at opportunities to see where changes can be made and what is the potential for us to encourage people to use this to convert single family homes into multi unit housing. John, is this something you can share on the screen and maybe we can go through? Yeah, thank you. Okay.
So through the chair, would you like me to discuss?
Yes.
Or do you
please,
want to take it?
Please. No, please go ahead.
So the section that's on the agenda is this one down here. It's not a very big section, but it's basically saying that any house or any residential property, not just a house, but any residential property could be converted for up to 4 units of housing by special permit of the Board of Appeals, as long as it's really only interior changes. Goes on to this side. And then there's some dimensional requirements. So one item that is an issue in terms of language that we've internally identified is this language for rental purposes. That can't be governed by the zoning bylaws, so it kind of doesn't really mean anything. So if this section is changed, I would recommend we take rental purposes out because that doesn't really matter. And I would assume the other option would be to remove it by special permit and to do it by right. That would be really the only change, unless we wanted to change the dimensions of the units themselves or the parking requirements themselves. That would be the only way to make it easier to create these units, which would then achieve the goals of creating more to reduce housing costs and to increase affordable housing options. But if there are other suggestions, I'm sure the board can discuss those.
Got it. So this thing that you said, the conversion of any house for rental purposes, you said removing that thing. So was this added to mean its current purpose should be for rental purposes, or subsequent to the conversion, this would be merely used for rental? What was the point behind this?
So through the chair, I think the purpose was, and obviously wasn't here in 2007, 2009, or 1991 when it was amended. But my assumption is that it would be the units would be rental. The house itself would not have to start off as rental. So it would basically be creating any rental units within the house, up to 4. So basically, if somebody lives in the house and they can do some interior conversions and basically make it a duplex, then that would be allowed as long as they got a special permit.
Got it. And when you suggested that the phrase rental purposes, you would think should be removed, what was the thought process behind that?
So the zoning bylaw can't really determine whether the units are going to be rental or somebody could condoize it and buy it. That's not something the zoning bylaw can really regulate.
Okay, got it.
So
okay.
Basically what I've heard from those who staff the Zoning Board of Appeals is that that's just kind of disregarded. It's a little confusing that the explanation has to be made every time, but there's nothing that's enforceable there. So there's no point in having it.
Got it. Okay. Since it doesn't serve any purpose, we should remove that. Okay. Got it.
I may, through the chair.
Yes, please.
John, do you know why you can't enforce whether it's rental or owning? Is it in the town? Is it a law, a Massachusetts law, or a town law?
So it's not a town law. I would say it's probably part of the zoning act, but I can't specifically point to where, but it's my understanding that zoning can't determine if a house can be rental or only owner occupied.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's
right.
kind of the same concept for anything else. You can't say that the single family uses within like the RA district can only be owner occupied, right? So then we can't say that these conversions can only be rental occupied. They could theoretically make it a 2-unit condo, and zoning doesn't really weigh in on that. Because rental versus owner occupied is not a defined use in zoning, only residential.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Through the chair, John, I think a couple years ago, we discussed some multifamily stuff and conversions. I can't remember if you were on board with us yet or not. But I think that part of that discussion allowed conversion if the owner of the property was living in the building. Is that also not allowed? Was that a mistake of ours at the time? Or am I not remembering that we did that correctly?
I mean, I would think it's probably a mistake. Why? How would you even regulate that? If you get a special permit and then the owner moves out or the owner rents it, there's no board or authority that's reviewing leases that are signed, right? So they could say, yeah, I live there, but who would be able to check? Who would be able to enforce that?
I guess I don't know.
So Ted, just out of curiosity, was that the 2 years ago, was that the accessory dwelling change that we had implemented, or am I the one mistaking that? I mean, I know we had discussed that as well, and it probably made it to town meeting, right? Are we talking about two different things?
If that question's aimed at me, I'm remembering something different, Sundar.
Okay. Got it.
Through the
Okay.
chair, this is different than the ADU.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
The
Go ahead.
ADU would be
Sorry,
a separate unit. And I don't think the ADU specified that it had to be a rental unit either,
Okay.
but I could be wrong.
I thought the ADU wasn't allowed to be a rental unit. It was someone living with the family. And I think a worry of ours was that it would become a rental unit.
Well, I think, didn't it change to be family was not a bond that needed to be proven?
Well, I think
Right.
we just kind of played with the idea of what family is a little bit. But I
Yeah.
think a concern was still that it not become a rental unit, that it serve the goals of an ADU.
Right. So I guess the differentiation between these two things would be that the ADU is an accessory dwelling unit to the principal use, and this would basically be a principal use of a multifamily unit. These wouldn't be accessory units to the original unit, right? It would just be converting a single family house to a two-family house or potentially a four-family house, as long as the exterior is not altered.
Right.
This would expressly create additional rental units, while ADU was expressly not to create additional rental units, right? Right, John?
It's a little trickier than that, because the ADU is the accessory dwelling unit is accessory to the single family use. So that's how they could get away with, it's got to be a related blood relative or by marriage to the homeowner. But I mean, I don't necessarily think there was a way to regulate who was living in the
Correct.
primary residence anyway. But that was an accessory to that use. So the use on the lot was still a single family use with an accessory dwelling unit. This would change the use on the lot effectively to be a multi-unit dwelling rather than a single family use with an accessory use.
Again,
Well,
through the
through the
chair, I have two questions, I think. The first is, this discussion, I'm assuming, is not attempting to put another article on this year's town meeting warrant. This is a longer term discussion.
Correct.
So good. That puts my mind
That is
at
correct.
we have time to think through these questions we're asking and try to wrap our heads
Of course.
around. My other question is, if we were to move to allowing a house being broken up into apartments, whether the owner lives there or not lives there, rentals, condos, if we were to allow that, would anyone go for an ADU anymore? Why not just do this? Have we destroyed the reason to have an accessory dwelling unit?
So through the chair, ADUs, you can only do one ADU per unit. This would allow you to do 4 units per building. So if you're doing
Up to 4.
up to 4, right?
Right.
Up to 4. So an ADU might be a lower bar to cross than to get a special permit from the Board of Appeals to convert it to a residential use, first off. It may not, but it may be. And then the changes you would need to make internally to the building is probably more significant for this type of conversion than for an ADU. So
Through the
that might
chair,
be
I
a
have a
deterrent for
question.
people to do this. And sorry, before we get to you, Elise, I mean, does it really matter if they go this route or the other route? Effectively, does it matter? They're both. I think they're both special permits. So,
Well, if that question is aimed at me, that's kind of my question too.
yeah.
Why would we have separate categories if they're blending in the way it sounds like this proposal might make? I don't know that we have a formal proposal yet. We have a discussion, but it sounds like we're blending them in a way so that if I owned a property and I wanted to convert it, and I could by right turn it into 2 or 3 apartments, I don't know that I would ever ask for an ADU because I could potentially make more money by making it apartments. So I'm just, and I think it's maybe because I'm rusty on the ADU. I haven't looked at this. Maybe it's because we haven't had many ZAC meetings, but I'm getting the sense that if we allowed breaking a home on the inside by right, then we're making it so getting an ADU would be a silly choice. But there must be a reason we want ADUs, or maybe we don't. We being the town.
So realistically, through the chair, they probably are duplicative in their output at this point because the ADU was changed. The ADU was originally just for family and related people, and now that that's changed, yeah, it probably is duplicative and may not need 2 different sections to talk about the same thing.
Okay. I'm sorry, Elise.
That's okay. I was kind of going to add to what you were saying, but I didn't want to interrupt or be out of place. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, that the ADU is separate from the physical house. When I read this that we're talking about right now, is that it's inside the original structure of the house. So like you have a house and you gut all the walls and you build, I don't know, 2 duplexes within the house, whereas an ADU would be like a guest house or a mother-in-law's cottage or something like that.
So through the chair, that could be true, but it doesn't have to be true. Because in the ADU language, it basically just says you need to have a barrier wall between the 2 units. So it could be, you have an addition to the house, if you've already put it there or not, and then you just put like a wall so that could be considered 2 separate units. They could be within the same structure. It doesn't have to be a separate structure. But I guess the only difference with the ADU is that you could potentially have a separate structure, an out structure that could be used for an ADU, where that wouldn't be possible with the conversion of residential use because it would be only internal changes. It may make sense to just combine these 2 into one section.
Right. John, there is this thing about provided that the exterior is not materially altered. What exactly does that mean? I'm asking simply because if there is the ability in this bylaw to convert a home into up to 4 different dwelling units, wouldn't the very least that we would need to do is provide them individual, entryways and all that? And wouldn't that materially alter the exterior?
So not necessarily. If you have a building that has one entryway, and then it's set up in a way that you can have 2 units on the ground floor that go right and left, and you go up a staircase, and then there's 2 units on the right and left there, that could potentially be 4 units within one structure. It would have to be a big structure, but it's possible. And then the egress could be so every unit would have to have 2 forms of egress, but the egress could be a window, and then a fire escape out the back or something like that. It's possible.
So through the chair, that was my question. John, you're getting pummeled with questions.
This wasn't even my suggestion to put on the agenda.
Wouldn't a fire escape or a wooden deck be a change to the appearance on the outside?
It could, but I guess the zoning enforcement officer would have to weigh in and say, is that something that's allowed no matter what? And you're not necessarily doing a wooden deck to accommodate the units. You could do a wooden deck anyway, even if it was a single family house. So that may not meet the requirement of altering. When I see altering, it would be, we need to bump this wall out to give this unit more space. It's not adding a deck because that's something that's basically already allowed.
Okay. John,
sorry,
very
through the
basic.
chair. That would just be that. I can't really answer that question because that's the zoning enforcement officer's role, but that would be my guess if I had to put myself in their shoes.
Again, through the chair, I'm trying to remember old discussions, John. I think when we were talking about ADUs, and maybe this disappears if we move in a direction of by right for apartments, something about egress could not be seen from the street or something like that, so that there could be a fire escape or a deck on the back, but something that couldn't be seen from the street, I seem to remember.
So you can all see this. This is the ADU requirement for ingress egress.
There it is. To the extent possible, should not detract from single family appearance of the dwelling.
And I will caution that this is the old language. This is not what was changed in the meeting.
Yep.
But I believe that was still kept.
I think it says that to the extent possible, exterior passageways and accessways shall not detract from the single family appearance of the dwelling. So, John, my question is a little bit more basic. I know 210-125 has been on the books in some form since 1991. We are looking at this to see if there are changes that we can make to make it easy to use. I mean, do we even know if anybody has actually utilized this to seek a special permit from the Board of Appeals to even, convert anything into a multifamily dwelling in the town?
So through the chair, my discussions with Elaine today were that when they looked at this section back in 2018, I think she said, they had done a history search and they think that there was about 10 permits issued under this section in 2018. I don't know of any, I don't staff the Board of Appeals, but I don't know of too many between then. So I would assume it's probably around the same. But I think the point of this discussion is this is an easy section to change. Maybe not easy to get past the town meeting, but it's short enough that if you wanted to provide an opportunity to create more units, this may be an easy section to change to do that. Whether how that's going to look or whether that's something that this committee even wants to do is up for discussion. I think it was Mary's intent was to just bring this before the board to discuss it and see what the thoughts were, because this one could be relatively easy, but as we're seeing right now, it may be a little bit more complicated than.
No, this could also be very contentious, right? So I completely
certainly,
agree.
yeah. Certainly.
Yeah, both me, Mary and me being part of the affordable housing subcommittee of the planning board, we are of course looking at opportunities to see how we can expand affordable housing in the town. Having said that, certain things which are so expressly stated in 210-125, exterior is not materially altered. And then I think this, I felt that the 2 parking spaces shall be provided on site for each dwelling unit. Again, it seems, I think that is open to discussion. those are a couple of things that almost become, in a way, blockers to a successful implementation of this. So maybe those are the things that we should talk about as to what are some of the things that can be modified to make this easier to adopt for any layperson. So members, any comment on this? You know, the exterior, provided the exterior is not materially altered. Why? I mean, why does this exist? And I mean, there must be a reason why. I mean, is it to, again, is it a perception thing? Is it more like the look and feel should not change from the outside, regardless of what has happened inside? John,
So-
do you have any thoughts on that?
Sundar, I think
Sorry,
I have
Ted, go
thoughts.
ahead.
I think that the discussions we've had since I've been on Zach, when these things come up, is a desire to maintain the character of neighborhoods, the look of neighborhoods, the desire to not have what was once single family house. I live on Grove Street in the downtown region, and this was a housing development for all the factories that used to be here. And we have these little houses that look like the kind of houses that kids draw in kindergarten, with a little triangle roof and a door in the middle. And I think the concern was to maintain that look and feel of a neighborhood. Just talking to neighbors, a concern that some have in my neighborhood is houses like mine being knocked down. And I know the Historic Commission has this concern, and houses that do not fit the character and do not have the antique look being put up in its place. And the Historical Preservation Committee is often fighting that fight. Similarly, if you are able to change the look of a house so it clearly screams multifamily dwelling, then the historical character of neighborhoods like mine, I think the fear is, go away. With that said, I have struggled with this discussion since my time on Zach. I think that we are a wealthy, exclusive town getting more wealthy and more exclusive, and I don't think that's a good thing. But I also think it's a good thing to maintain historic character in parts of the town that have that historic character. So I am torn every single time this issue comes up, trying to achieve both goals: to open it up to lower income families and individuals, while not losing the historic charm that we have, especially along Grove Street towards downtown, Hayden Rose Street, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps with your question, but that's my own take
it definitely does.
on discussions we've had, but also my own internal struggle.
Got it. Comments from other members?
Sundar, I have a comment.
Sure.
I also live in downtown, and I understand the wording in there, just like what Ted said, to try to maintain the look of the neighborhood. There's two houses right across the street from mine that are duplexes, and I didn't even know that until I lived here for about 3 years. And I just thought they had a lot of kids. But, you know, that being said, when you drive down my street, you would never know that they were multifamily housing. And I feel like it just makes the street a little more charming and neighborhood looking, whereas if there was like a condo building that was cement instead of something that was more, I don't know, I don't want to say historic, but something more aligned with the rest of the neighborhood. I think it's important to have zoning to keep things looking the way we want, if that's the look we want.
Got it. Other members? Yeah, sure. John, one thing I did want to ask. So, altering it materially, that is one thing. What about the fact that each of these units needed to have two additional, or rather two parking spaces yes, that doesn't impact anything in the structure of the dwelling itself. Does that, how much of a blocker does that factor become? Meaning, we need to have the space, first of all, in the lot to create those additional parking spaces. So is one of the discussion points we should have, whether to change that to maybe have just one parking, or completely remove this section at all.
So through the chair.
Sorry, I meant, yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm guessing here, but my guess would be that the 2-car requirement was a deterrent or a way to only allow 4 units on larger pieces of property so that the parking would be able to get provided. I mean, this could always get varied through a variance by Board of Appeals, but that would be a whole separate application. But it would be my guess that the intent of having 2 parking spaces per unit is to limit the number of units that can potentially be on a certain lot. But that's something the board or the committee can always change if you think it should be one space per unit, or the number of spaces per bedrooms of each unit, or however.
Got it. I guess Mary is not here, so I can't lean on her for this question. The reason we are discussing this is because there was a perception that there are a lot of deterrents in the current language, and we should make this simpler. Is that a fair assumption? And which is why I'm asking all these questions as to the external appearance as well as the parking requirement. Because otherwise, this is here. The bylaw does exist, and it seems like it has been put to good use even in 2018. So, what exactly are we looking for here? Are we looking at making this simpler in terms of process, or making it simpler in terms of language so that a larger subset of properties actually qualify for this? I guess I'm basically asking why are we discussing this if this is already on the books? Maybe it's a very basic question.
Through the chair, are you asking me?
I'm asking you and others on the other members as well.
I think it's on the agenda to see if this is something that the committee would like to change, and I think the committee needs to weigh in on that. Maybe not tonight.
Yep.
Maybe at the next meeting. It certainly doesn't have to change.
Right. So a question for the members. I mean, what are the things that could, again, just as a thought exercise, what are the things that need to change here to make this simpler? I mean, keeping aside our biases in some fashion, what are the things that, that would potentially change? I mean, I can definitely think of the parking restrictions, either eliminating them or reducing the 2 parking spaces to 1 is something that I can definitely think of as a positive change. I'm just curious what board members think about other proposals to change the language here. As I said, only as a thought exercise.
If I may weigh in on the parking, really quick. There was a woman, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago. She bought a house in downtown in my neighborhood, and she wanted to turn it into, I think it was 8 units. And the main reason that the planning board said no was because of parking, because the parking would have overflowed onto A Street. And the argument that was used was that Hopkinton is a town where you have to drive. You can't walk to a commuter rail. And if you work somewhere other than right next to your house, you have to drive. So if there is a couple living there, theoretically, each person would have a car. So you can't have too much overflow parking into the street, especially a lot of streets in downtown don't allow overnight parking in the winter because of plowing. And also the biggest concern on some of the smaller streets is that if there's a line of cars like overflow from the units, ambulances and garbage trucks can't fit through because the streets aren't wide enough. So I think that's why they have the 2 parking spot there. But that being said, I guess it would also depend where the units are.
Okay. Other members, as I said, just as a thought exercise, I'm just curious what others feel. This can be made easier in what fashion?
So I'm
simpler
through the
yeah.
chair. I more than being made easy, I see the hurdles basically. So to make more affordable housing, you have to, for the same ground, should be able to hold more than the number of houses that it holds right now, so that it doesn't have to be as big. It can be smaller so that it can be affordable. The problem is then all the zoning changes that we are changing would make the population increase. The population increase means schools get hit, and people are going to, the perception, and there's fight back about anything that seems like we're going to increase number of development in the town. So it's like a cycle we're stuck in. So more than ideas for it, I just that's why I'm like dumbstruck, because I'm like, yes, we can change that away from no rental properties and take away for rental purposes in that amendment thing. But that means there is a possibility there will be more dwelling units coming in, which means there will be fight back in the town meeting that you're trying to add more when we are trying to control the growth and stuff like that. So that's where my concern, and I like get stuck in the middle.
Through the chair, I echo everything
yes.
Madhu said.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, Sundar, what other, aside from allowing, and I don't want to throw away this proposal, that's not what I'm suggesting, but I'm curious, aside from allowing easier conversion of single family homes to multifamily homes, what other brainstorming ideas has your subcommittee with Mary come up with? Anything?
One is for us to spend the money that builders give us in lieu of providing us affordable housing within subdivisions. I think we have a regulation which says that for every X number of units, they commit to building a small number of a percentage of affordable homes, and when they are, more often than not, when that isn't possible, because again of financial reasons, funds, the builder provides funds in lieu of that, and that is sitting in an account. So we haven't really planned on how to spend that money. I don't think that money actually has been spent. So, and the idea is for us to maybe acquire land or acquire old property and sort of convert that into affordable homes. We really haven't done much in terms of thinking this through as an idea, but those funds are here. I mean, we have that. We have those funds. And at least the idea was for us to propose something in terms of building something from the ground up or acquiring property and converting that into multifamily dwelling.
Thank you. The reason I ask is I'm never opposed to exploring any ideas, including this idea here of converting the homes more easily. But I would be hesitant to vote on this one way or the other without knowing what other solutions or proposals we have to allow for more affordable housing. If it was decided that this is the only answer there is, that would lead my vote one way. If it's decided, well, this is one of 5 plans, all we think might work equally well, but very different answers, that might push my voting in another direction. So I want very much to have more affordable housing. I think town meeting wants very much to control population growth, especially because of pressure on the schools or perceived pressure. And like I said before, I really like the antique character of the center of town, which is, I think, where the targets would be for the conversions, is my guess, but I don't know that for sure. given that soup, I'd love to know before voting on anything, and we're not proposing voting today, what other solution your subcommittee is exploring. And you gave a sketch of that, and maybe John has.
Right. No, we can also share the presentation that, the draft presentation that Mary and I put together. If I'm not mistaken, this forum had a peek into that, as did the planning board. That can be recirculated to this group after this meeting, for a subsequent conversation that has some broad ideas, nothing very specific, I would say. The planning board definitely has encouraged us to think of, the term used was haymaker ideas. So definitely there is some work to be done in working towards that, between myself, Mary, and Shahidul Manan, who is also part of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. So I don't think we've exhausted all our options here. Definitely one of the things that the planning board encouraged us to do is, seek funding to do certain things. I mean, these are think of grand plans of how to go about increasing the affordable housing stock in the community. What that doesn't address is the concerns that both you, Ted, and Madhu have brought up here, which is the concern that there is sort of uncontrolled population growth, potentially as a result of more housing being created. So it almost seems like we need to first address the elephant in the room. Do we want more affordable housing to start with? Do we want more people coming into this community before we go off and start proposing, here are the ways that can be achieved?
Just because there's more of it doesn't mean it's going to be affordable. Every day, all the rentals in town, there's very few of them. So supply and demand, it's very expensive. I'm renting here in Legacy Farms when my house is being built, and it ain't cheap. And anything that anybody converts, they're going to maximize their rent unless it's rent controlled. So, I like the process kind of the way it is because it's measured. It takes time. It gives input from all different factors. They send out letters to, the people that live around it so they can voice their concerns. So everybody's voice is heard. But unless it's rent controlled, it's really not going to do a whole lot because the rental units are going to be, really expensive.
Yeah, valid point.
So through the chair, this is not the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, but we've talked about it, Planning Board, and Ted, you and others in here might be interested to hear about this. But for all of you who are not familiar, the state has a Housing Choice Initiative program that has a second piece to it that is going to be implemented starting this year. And basically what that is for MBTA communities. Hopkinton is one of them. MBTA communities are those served by the MBTA commuter rail, the T or has a bus station in or in an area nearby. All of those MBTA communities are going to be required to put together a zoning district that is supposed to be within half a mile of the commuter rail station, bus station, whatever the MBTA site is. And within that district, which is going to have to be about 50 acres, there's going to be an average of 15 units per acre density. And for community, and there's more to it, but that's kind of the general idea of it. And for communities who do not do that, they will lose housing choice funding, some state capital funding, and MassWorks funding. So MassWorks funding is the one that is particularly scary to us because we do get MassWorks funding. So it's still in its infancy. The draft guidelines have just come out like at the end of last year. So there's still public comment going on for those. But our understanding is that Hopkinton, along with every other town that's in the area, up through Boston, is going to have to implement these districts, and these districts are going to allow this 15 units per acre by right. So it's not even going to require a special permit. There are certain ways that we can mitigate that. So Hopkinton doesn't have half a mile radius around the Southborough train station because it's in Southborough. So the portion of Hopkinton that's within that half mile is not 50 acres. So we're going to have to make up the 50 acres elsewhere in town. Where that can be, we still need to get guidance from the state. But, our general summary review of the guidelines show that maybe the downtown district would satisfy that, because there is no requirement that there's a certain density by right for the downtown business district. You can put multiple residential units in that district, but we need to look into that a little bit more. There may be some other districts that we can already satisfy the requirement, but we need to look into that. So that in of itself is going to create, or at least potentially create, just more units in general, which will assumedly drop the price down for areas within eastern Massachusetts. Whether that's going to work, we don't know, but that's something that I think needs to be taken into account for any affordable housing planning that we're going to do as a town moving forward, because that's going to be a potentially huge change. Now, in certain towns like Hopkinton, these overlay districts may be in name only. They may be put over certain land that's already developed. And so, it's zoned that way, but the cost for somebody to tear down all the uses within that property and rebuild these 15 unit per acre developments may not pencil out. So the ability is there, but the actual units may not get built. So we need to play with that and figure out what that actually means for Hopkinton. But theoretically, this whole program, the intent of it is to create just more units around transportation, which will increase the number of units and increase the supply, which should theoretically lower the cost. But we need to look into that a little bit further. And then also I'll say for the affordable housing, which the affordable housing subcommittee is not working on, this is a land use department thing, but we are working to get a shared housing services office set up between certain communities in our MAPC subdistrict and the neighboring subdistrict, which will help us maintain our current affordable housing units and potentially allow for us to do some work and figure out some ways to increase those affordable units moving into the future. But that still needs to get approved at town meeting and still needs to get some other hurdles cleared before we can say for sure that that's going to be something we're participating in.
Through the chair, John, do you have a timetable guess on the MBTA driven zoning changes?
So right now we only have guidance on what we need to do in 2022 to comply. And it's really a presentation to the select board and I think submitting an updated parcel map to the state. That's all the guidance we've gotten so far. So it's obviously not going to get on this town meeting, and it may not get on the 2023 town meeting. We'll see where the state goes. But right now it's kind of just a very low bar to comply. And it's really just acknowledging that we're aware of the requirements. We've discussed it publicly, and we're taking steps to figure out how that would be applicable to Hopkinton.
And then again, through the chair, sorry, Sindar, I feel like I've taken a lot of airtime tonight. John, you mentioned something about it can be an overlay on top of property that then, because of costs, probably wouldn't be developed into 15 units per acre. Are you suggesting that would then be shot down the way, say, a solar overlay could be? Or are you saying the state might, or is it too early to know?
It's too early to know, but I mean, theoretically, the way that we've gotten the guidelines, like how can they shoot it down? If a town like Hopkinton is required to zone land within half a mile of the train station and Trevor Lane condominiums are already there, we can only overlay that area with it. We can't force them to tear down those structures and build higher density housing. It's only if a developer were to come in, have the money to buy everyone out, tear it down and put this back up, or in certain situations, the land isn't developed. So then that could be built on. But in Hopkinton's case, and probably in a lot of other towns' case, because a lot of development happens around these transit nodes, it's just going to be like an overlay for the future. It's not going to be an overlay for now. So we don't know how it's going to work in practice.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how Wellesley would fill this need, but the train goes right through the heart of their downtown.
And I mean, you think about Newton or you think about Grafton.
Yeah.
Grafton, half a mile within the train station is Tufts Veterinary School. They're not going to tear that down. So the interesting part is that the requirement is an average. I think it's an average of 15 units per acre. So you could have a district that's got much higher density, and then and you can segment these districts. You can fragment it so that there's an overlay over here and an overlay over here, especially in the case where Hopkinton doesn't have the 50 acres around the transit station. So we would have to fragment it, and you could theoretically do higher density in one spot and then much lower density in another spot, as long as the combination of those two districts equal 15. But how that's going to work, we don't know. So that's what we were saying is, can we, we're just throwing things around in our head. Can we zone the Windsor at Hopkinton area as this overlay? And that already meets the 15. That may already meet the 15 units per acre. And so then that's satisfied. So then we can do another thing. We don't know how that would be allowed, or if they're looking for us to do lesser developed areas so that there could be the potential to develop it with these types of units. And that's what we're fighting with, because this could just be a district in name only and not really ever be utilized. So it's still very early. We're still learning a whole lot about it. I think we have a public listening session for planning professionals tomorrow. So we're still getting information from the state, and not everything is completely clear.
Thanks.
Okay, just in terms of the 210, 125, I think definitely what we can do is, between myself and Mary, as I said, more progress needs to be made in the subcommittee, the affordable housing subcommittee. And we can present the findings back to this forum when we've made more progress. I'm happy to resend the deck that we had earlier shared. Unfortunately, not much progress has been made since the last time we presented this to both the ZAC and the planning board. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to speak to Mary and find out how we can actually further the discussion on potential changes to 210, 125 in a subsequent meeting. Along with that, as I said, send the deck around. Definitely, what John has just said also has some level of impetus to having this conversation. So those are, I feel, the next steps in this. So definitely, I didn't have a larger agenda behind this, other than to basically open up the conversation to see, to sort of assess the pulse of this group. And to see what potential next steps could be. So suffice to say that this can probably come back on the agenda in a subsequent forum once we've had some conversations between myself and Mary as to how to proceed with this, and of course Curtis. Anything else to add? Because I did not have anything else at this point. Okay, I will take that as a no. In which case, we can move to the next item on the agenda, the minutes for 22nd of November, 2021.
To the chair, just a quick question. Does the minutes have to have like our official names or something? Like, my full name is Madhumita. I go by Madhu, and it's for the past few minutes I didn't pay attention. I was like, it doesn't matter. And today I was like, maybe I should check. Maybe it's supposed to have the full name or something. Like, that's not needed, right?
So through the chair, it's whatever you would prefer. If you want your full name, we can have your full name. If not,
no, that's fine. I was like, does it have to be super official? And that's all. Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Madhu, I'm sure they can cross-verify back to, who were the board members at that time, or rather,
I hope so. I hope so, because that's how I go. I go by Madhu, but I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to be official. I should just check. Yeah.
John, I'd like to
A
use
foreign
my
key
fraternity pledge name, please.
What is that?
I was never in
His
a
Highness
fraternity,
Ted
but I like
Barker
that joke.
Any changes people need to make to the minutes, or have people had an opportunity to read through that? Okay. In that case, what's the language? I move a motion to approve the minutes of November 22nd, 2021, right?
Second?
Moved. Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have a second?
Second?
Okay, thank you. Ron Foisey,
Aye.
Ted Barker Hook,
Aye.
James Burton,
Aye.
Elise Barrett Mihalowski,
Aye.
Nisha Nanavane Kharade,
Aye.
Rachel Rawson,
Aye.
Paramita Chandrasekhar.
Aye.
Is Bob Hamilton a member? I'm sorry, I apologize for asking. Okay,
Which
and
can?
Sundar Sivaram is an aye. Thank you. And Sundar Sivaraman is an aye. And that passes. With that, I'm going to move a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
Sundar, through the chair, if I may,
Yes.
as we head into what I'm going to call the Zach off season, because it sounds like our work with regard to town meeting is mostly done unless the planning board sends something back to us, which has happened. But I think the window for that is closing. Am I right, John? Yeah. We, at the beginning of this term, John introduced, and I'm going to get the terminology wrong, John, zoning not by use, but by form, I think it was. And I thought it was a fascinating idea that I think we at the time weren't ready to really wrestle with. I know I wasn't. It seemed too big and not something that could be town meetingable. But I never meant to indicate, at least for myself, that we shouldn't talk about that anymore. And as we head into the summer season, it might be worth revisiting that and thinking through, if anyone else is interested, thinking through whether we might kick those ideas around and see if there are any applications, even very small geographic applications to start.
Good
So
idea,
it's
Ted.
just a thought about future meetings.
Sure.
And I, speaking of future meetings, I haven't forgotten about trees. I don't know when we're going to feel ready to pick that up again, but it's still in my head as a discussion.
Through the chair, 2 comments.
Sure.
Ted, it's form-based code.
Thank you.
In case you want to do some investigation, that's the term. So you can just Google that.
Right.
And
Writing
then,
that down.
and I was going to reach out to them, but it may make sense if you wanted to take the lead on this. Medway is proposing a tree protection bylaw at their town meeting this coming spring. And it's not, I think it's something, I don't know much about it. I had a meeting where the representative from Medway mentioned that they were doing it. And from their description, it seemed like it was something similar to what we had been talking about. I was going to reach out.
We talked about several different ways of doing it. Which one do you mean?
Rather than like a specimen tree or in the right of way tree protection bylaw, it would be more of a large scale tree protection.
Uh-huh.
So I was going to reach out to them in, the coming weeks, because they said it's still in draft form. But if that's something you wanted to do, happy to give you some more detail.
Sure.
Or I can do it.
Sure. I would like that. If you could send me contact information to make my path a little bit easier.
I'd have to look into that, but yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out to me and we can have a conversation about it, then that's fine too.
I imagine that's coming on the heels of that massive warehouse development that ultimately fell through, I'm guessing.
I don't know what the impetus was for it, but maybe. Not super familiar with Medway's planning, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Ted Barker Hook,
Aye.
Ron Foisey,
Aye.
James Burton,
Aye.
Elise Barrett Mihaloski,
Aye.
Nisha Kharade,
Aye.
Rachel Russell,
Aye.
Madhu Chandrasekhar,
Aye.
and Sundar Sivaram is an aye. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And when is the next meeting? Sorry about that. John, when is the next meeting?
So it looks like due to the holidays and planning board meetings, the next meeting is February 14th,
Happy Valentine's Day.
which
Valentine's
you could
Day,
always
nice.
you could always cancel if people have plans.
My Valentine will be right here next to me for that meeting. There's no better way to spend a Valentine's than in a Zach meeting with you wonderful people. We should all have our Valentines with us. I think they will thank us. What could be more romantic?
Of course.
Thank you and good night.
Yeah.
Good night. Happy New Year,
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.